And we are live. This is Dr. Nelson Vasquez, family physician in Florida with Kiltz Health. Thank you for being here. And if you don't mind, put in the chat where you're watching from. Let us know where in this world you are. Uh, okay. And
Oops, there I am.
hello.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. We're live.
All right.
So, everybody, if you can please put your questions in the chat. If you have any questions for Amy, we're going to talk to her in a minute. Put them with a QQQ in front of you so I don't miss them. And I'm sorry if I miss any questions, post them again. Uh, okay. And we have today Amy Berger. And I'm going to go ahead and read what we have here about her. Amy Berger is a U.S. Force veteran. I didn't know that. That was a new fact, even though I've been watching you for a little bit. And a certified nutrition specialist who helps people do keto without the crazy. She writes about a wide range of health and nutrition-based related subjects, such as weight loss, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, thyroid function, and more. She has presented internationally on these issues and is the author of the Alzheimer's Antidote, uh, the Stolz Layer, and co-author of End Your Carb Confusion, written with Dr. Eric Westman. She is a lead nutritionist for Adapt Your Life Academy, where she creates course content and coaches people through implementing a low carb keto diet safely and effectively. Welcome to Kills Health live stream in the afternoons. We normally do this on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I don't know if you're ever up at 6 a.m., but we're also live every morning, Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Dr. Kills usually is there in the mornings. He also comes in and shows up in the afternoon sporadically. I don't know if he will do that today. Uh, and we also have a Zoom call for our community, Kills Mighty Tribe. You have to be a member. If you're in the chat here watching this, if you're not a member, the link is in the description. Sign up. It is free to sign up. It is free to have a basic membership, and hopefully we'll have in the future Amy come into one of those Zoom calls. Anyways, thank you for being here. I'm gonna start with saying I like the KISS principle, and you guys, that's one of the things you know and do. I've been watching Dr. Westman for a long time as well, and yeah, I like the principle of just keeping things simple. You don't necessarily, I mean, you could track, you could measure, you can do all the crazy things that some people sometimes do, but do you have to? No, you don't have to. So, anyways, uh, we I guess you selected with Alia talking about the antidote to Alzheimer's. And let's go ahead and talk about that. If people have any questions, they'll put them in the chat. And then at some point, we'll go ahead and start answering questions. But thank you for being here. Go ahead. Tell us a little bit about you, because you do have a little bit of a story as well. And
Doesn't everybody?
yes, yes. I think most of the people, yeah, I find that most of the people in this space, whether it's a low carbohydrate, carnivore, at Kiltz Health, we are primarily carnivores. carnivore, but keto is good. Just carnivore is better, we think. You don't have to be carnivore. By the way, I don't know how well. Let me see. All right. So you see this guy here? Started strict keto in January 2023. And for about 6 months, I lost about 45 pounds on strict keto. And then I switched it, tweaked basically the carbs to 0 and lost the additional 55 or 60 pounds on mostly carnivore. Reverse diabetes, reverse
Incredible.
hypertension. I've also been a physician for over 40 years. By the way, I'm 2 months older than Dr. Westman. I met him in low carb bulk, and that was my first question to him because I knew he was born the same year as me, and he's 2 years younger than me. So, anyways, the floor is yours, Amy.
Well, that's you've had an incredible transformation. I mean, you are living proof of what carbohydrate restriction can do, whether somebody does keto or carnivore or anywhere in between. This is the real deal. It really works. And you couldn't have said it better with the introduction. My favorite thing is helping people simplify all of this and take all the complication out and the confusion out. There is a time and a place for measuring and tracking. I've had clients for whom who were not tracking, and I said, I think you need to start tracking, or I think you need to start measuring certain things. But unless there's really a need to do it, I really like to help people drown out all of the overcomplication is really the best word that I can use. When you take something that should be very straightforward, just don't eat sugar or starch, or don't eat any plant foods if you're carnivore. And it's become this crazy thing with all these moving parts that you have to worry about and micromanage everything. And that's, you can turn your diet into a full-time job, and who has time for that anymore? So if you have to completely rearrange your entire life based around your food, something is wrong. That's probably not the plan for you. And I'm saying this because, you asked for my story. I'll just give it to you really quickly. I've been eating this way long enough that when I was brand new, Facebook did not even exist. Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, none of it even existed. So you had to keep it simple because there was no one out there influencing you, telling you that you needed to buy these 16 products and use these 4 apps. And all you really did was cut the carbs out of your diet. And that got most people pretty far. And it breaks my heart a little, to be honest, to see how overwhelmed people are now when they're brand new to this, but more so not even when they're brand new, when they've been at it a while and they're listening to like one too many influencers and they have no idea what to do anymore. And I entered into low carb and keto personally for weight loss, but I have a family history of type 2 diabetes, obesity, stroke, and cancer. So the deck is stacked there. But at the time I got into it, again, the landscape was so different now. Social media, as we know, it didn't exist. But I will also say that even though I got into this personally because of weight loss, over the years that I've learned about all this and studied, weight loss is amazing. I don't want to downplay that. I mean, look at your pictures right there, tell the story. But when you think that you could be free of type 2 diabetes, you could be free of PCOS, completely reverse fatty liver disease, get rid of migraines, get rid of skin issues. I mean, it's almost like weight loss is this nice little side effect that happens while your health completely transforms. So I really love helping people with keto far beyond weight loss, because it's just so, look at all the research now coming out on keto for mental health. I mean, truly, truly life-changing stuff. So, and I will never
And we're not
say,
we're not talking only about anxiety and depression, and I don't mean to minimize those things, but those are the simpler uh, mental diagnosis. When you're talking about severe schizophrenia and bipolar illness, which is, I mean, it is the severe metabolic dysfunction of the brain.
yeah,
Uh, and to hear the stories of people that are that have reversed all the symptoms and have gotten off medications, which is remarkable.
yeah. I mean, we're talking about people that have been like plagued, and I don't use that word lightly, but plagued by these debilitating things for decades. And, maybe medication helped a little bit, maybe other therapies helped a little bit, but changing the food had this profound impact that all of that stuff didn't even come close to. So, and I will never say that, everybody can be free of medication or that keto or carnivore fixes everything. I wish it did. I'm never going to cross that line, but holy moly, it can certainly fix a lot, can't it?
And there are so many things that are chronic diseases that have no solution, progressive and worsening all the time, that we're seeing complete reversal. That, sometimes if I tell you that this guy was using 300 units of insulin a day and not now,
Yeah.
or multiple medications, off 7 or more prescription medications. Anyways, uh, go ahead. Let's talk about Alzheimer's. A very interesting uh, evidence, by the way. This is not Alzheimer's, but I have here, I believe her husband had Parkinson's disease. This is Clearly Keto by Mary Newport, Dr. Newport.
Mm-hmm.
She has a wonderful story about how she dealt with her husband's
Yeah, he did. He
illness.
did have Alzheimer's. Yeah.
He did also have, okay,
Yes. Yeah.
great story. Anyways, go ahead and illuminate us.
Well, the nutshell version is that they now regularly call Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes, or sometimes diabetes of the brain. And something that most people, even people who have Alzheimer's or their loved ones and caregivers, are never ever told, is that the major problem in the brain of somebody with Alzheimer's disease is that the brain has somehow lost the ability to take up and metabolize glucose properly. So the brain is basically starving. I call it an energy crisis or a fuel shortage in the brain. And of course, if your brain does not have enough energy, of course, you're going to have memory loss. Of course, you're going to have behavioral changes and personality disturbances. So, and we can't say for certain why that happens, what causes the brain to lose the ability to metabolize glucose, but that is the fundamental problem. And it really appears that these amyloid plaques that everybody's heard of, all these plaques that build up in the brain and they're causing Alzheimer's, the plaques, the amyloid might actually be a consequence of this fuel shortage. This amyloid is secreted. Actually, it looks more and more like a protective response. And so that's why
I
all of
am
these
already
drugs,
sold. I am already sold on that being the result, not the
yeah,
cause. The amyloid
because
plaques are just the result of what's going on.
yeah, all of the drugs that have been developed so far to target the amyloid have totally failed to have any beneficial impact on cognitive function. So even if you reduce the plaque, the brain is no better off. And insulin resistance is a major risk factor for Alzheimer's. Type 2 diabetes is a major risk factor. So it is looking more and more like Alzheimer's is every bit a metabolic condition, just like cardiovascular disease, PCOS, fatty liver, all of these other things. Why we almost take it for granted now that diet and lifestyle affect our physical health. So why don't we entertain the possibility more that the brain is every bit as susceptible to, a diet and lifestyle that is causing problems? The brain is not immune to all the other stuff that happens in the rest of the body. And I think Alzheimer's is really the end result of that. But I do want to just say for the record, there are a lot of forms of cognitive impairment that are not Alzheimer's disease. Like a vitamin B12 deficiency can cause cognitive problems even with no glucose and insulin issues. An untreated or improperly treated hypothyroidism can cause cognitive impairment. So not all cognitive decline is Alzheimer's, but when it is Alzheimer's, I really do think there's this big metabolic angle to it.
Yeah, even iron deficiency, like you mentioned, B12 deficiency, any type of anemia can have impacts on the brain health because it's reducing the amount of circulating oxygen, hemoglobin that transports the oxygen. So there are certainly other causes. Fortunately, most of those ones identified are easily fixed. Not so much when you have a metabolic dysfunction and you continue to follow the current guidelines of eating 40-50% of your calories from carbohydrates. So let's see if we have a question here. I have no appetite, even on standard American diet, can't handle seafood or organ meat. Been doing keto solid going for 3 months. What to do? Had 2 strokes in 6 years and many autoimmune. Now, what? What do you think, Amy?
Well, I mean, I am not a medical doctor, so I hesitate to say anything. I would be curious about this lack of appetite. I wonder what kind of specialist you could see to look into that. I don't think it's a problem that you don't tolerate seafood or organ meat, or if you just don't like it. There's a lot of people thriving on carnivore diets and keto diets without seafood and without organ meat. So they are definitely nutrient rich, but they're not required. So I wouldn't worry about that. But no appetite. So what I'm wondering, when do you eat? Do you just eat at certain times thinking it's probably time for me to eat? I would just want to know more before saying anything in a situation like this.
It certainly triggers in the mind of a clinician multiple follow-up questions because there's not information there. But so the appetite problem has nothing to do with her diet. Something might be causing the appetite suppression, let's say. Sounds, she's saying ketovore, so I'm assuming she's very low on carbs and has been doing for 3 months. Many autoimmune issues. The autoimmune issues, they seem to all get better on a very low carbohydrate diet, but it may take time. And some people have remarkable improvement in the levels of inflammation in certain diseases. Some others, it might take a while. A lot of people with Hashimoto's, they have improvement, but the antibodies never go down to zero. And many other autoimmune diseases seem to get better. And I love that Dr. Westman loves to have the evidence, and a lot of the things that are happening in this past few years that we're seeing, it's really anecdotal. We don't have the hard evidence, but oh boy, the noise is so loud. It's incredible.
I mean, the research starts with anecdotes, so nobody really knows what to research until there's a signal starts to emerge from the noise, like, oh, this is something we should look into. But what do you think? I just reading this person's question again, 2 strokes in 6 years, but they've only been ketovore for 3 months. So I wonder if the strokes could have possibly affected the appetite regulation part of the brain. And maybe that's why there's no, unless this lack of appetite was a problem long before the strokes.
Yeah. It sounds like she needs to, approach probably her primary care physician and work up every possibility. By the way, I'm a family physician by training. My residency was in family medicine a long, long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. It was so long that when I went to school, there was no history class. It was called current events. But yeah, a workup would be appropriate. Definitely a stroke can, damage so many areas of the brain, and a lot of people have problems with swallowing. So I'm not surprised that some people will also have problems with hunger or the lack thereof. But it might deserve a good workup to try to determine what's going on. As far as you mentioned, cannot handle seafood, don't eat seafood. You cannot handle organ meat, don't eat organ meat. I think sometimes I take this approach in telling patients things, well, if that's affecting you, stop doing that. It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
All right. Hi, nice to be on the live. Type 1 diabetic on ketogenic diet. 2 days ago, blood sugar in the 190s. 18 years and today having my period with pain. So I guess she's 18 years old. Can you explain why this happens? Doctor suggests fiber. Please help. So I guess, what do you think? And I want you to talk about fiber, by the way.
Well, if this cookie, are you asking to explain why your period causes pain? I mean, that's, or are you asking why your blood sugar was high? I don't know what your blood sugar normally is, so I don't know if 190 is high or low or normal for you. I'll assume it's high. The menstrual cycle does affect blood sugar. I think not in everybody, but I would expect that possibly in somebody with type 1 diabetes, it might be more pronounced for you. So it's possible that again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm hesitant to say anything, but just the menstrual cycle can affect your insulin sensitivity, whether it's your own insulin or insulin that you inject. So it may be that you need slightly more insulin during this phase of your cycle, but I would rather have the doctor comment. But it's important to understand that I think diet has the biggest impact on our blood sugar, like what we eat and drink, but it's not the only thing. Exercise, if you're a type 1 diabetic, exercise affects blood sugar, sleep affects blood sugar, the menstrual cycle. So there's all these things that can affect it, that even when you're on a ketogenic diet, sometimes you still need to fine tune things based on those other factors.
All right. So I have a couple of comments. I did see in the chat someone who has been type 1 diabetic for 60 plus years, I think. Amy Perrin. And she's often in our lives here. I wonder if she has a comment, but we don't know how long she's been on a ketogenic diet, number one. Blood sugars can spike for many of the reasons you mentioned. 18 years old, having painful periods. I wonder if there might be some endometriosis or any other pelvic inflammatory problems, ovarian cysts, anything like that. I mean, a young woman with a painful period, it's frequent. Sometimes there is no identifiable particular cause, but I think if it's worse than usual, it deserves a visit sometimes. And heard the doctor suggested, oh, you need fiber. What do you think?
Well, I I can't imagine a mechanism by which fiber would improve menstrual pain. So I don't really know why they would suggest that. They might just be afraid of keto. I don't I I can't I don't know how fiber would help that. I-
All right. So this is Amy. I was mentioning brisket boomers, Amy Perrin.
that's a great
I am
name.
type I'm type 1 diabetic too. I've been carnivore for 7 years. You still need to inject insulin with meals, protein and fat, and stress can cause higher blood sugars.
Yep.
And Amy has been carnivore since the age around, if I get this correct, sorry if I mess it up. Amy has been since the age of 14, 15, or something like that. And she's in her 70s. She's been type 1 diabetic. So she's been carnivore for 7 years. She helps a lot of people that are
Great.
also type 1 diabetics
If
navigate.
people saw my jaw drop, it's because I thought you were saying she's been carnivore since she was 14 or so. No, she's been diagnosed type 1 since then. She's been carnivore for 7. I was like, wow, that's a she might be the longest stretch of carnivore, but no, it's the diabetes. Yeah.
Yes, if I did say that, I could have been. My brain processes. Uh, my first language is Spanish. Uh, didn't speak English until I was 19, so maybe I confused. And by the way, you mentioned your family history of diabetes, stroke, hypertension. All these things. I have each one of those that you mentioned or had because
Hmm.
everything is gone now. So,
Awesome.
but there's a woman in Canada. She's been carnivore for over 60 years, 65 years.
Wow.
Amy, and she's going to be part of a documentary, Healing Humanity, uh, for which I believe they also interviewed Dr. Westman. Dr. Westman has participated in a couple of those live streams, raising funds for that documentary. Uh, all right, so let me see if I have any other questions here.
Well,
And
and I
by the
just
way, yeah, I was going
to
to say
go.
that I had a stroke actually a year before this picture, and it gave me a weird side effect. Gave me a Spanish accent. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was gonna go back to that question about the pain with the period.
Uh,
This is like you were saying before, this is only anecdotal, but a lot of women report less severe PMS on a ketogenic or carnivore diet. Not everybody, but the people that were really debilitated, it does seem to help at least some people. Like fewer cramps, fewer just maybe less bloating. You might still puff up a little bit, but less. Just some of those issues are a little less severe than they were before a low carb diet.
and as you know, Dr. Kiltz is a OBGYN and infertility specialist, and all those things basically improve. Uh, but sometimes if you're having enough problems, it is okay to go to the doctor and try to figure out if there's any specific reason for it. So, yes, Thomas, that's how it happened. That's how I got my Spanish accent. Carnivore has not been able to get rid of that.
But that's okay. That's not a problem. You don't need to fix that. That's not a problem.
All right. If you have more questions, please put them in the chat. QQQ. So I hope I didn't miss any. So my experience with Alzheimer's dementia, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. It's not the only dementia. There are many others. Uh, Throughout the years, there have been medication after medication after medication that have come out with a bang, and oh, this is the latest and best thing. And I have to say, in my opinion, 100% of them have completely failed, because I don't know of any one of them that has done really much. They might, most of them might improve symptoms for just a little bit, and then you go back. They change. They make no impact on all-cause mortality. They make no impact even on the dementia. The end result is going to be the same at the same time, because that's what studies show. Uh, Now, I do have another anecdote. Just 2 weeks ago, we were in Seattle, Washington, in a meetup, and I'm in Florida, by the way. I'm in near Orlando. So I'm talking to someone who she's telling me about her mother, who has been her mother is 85 now, or close to 85, but for years this person talking to me has been talking to her about a lower carbohydrate diet and carnivore diet, and how that she may get help from it, and she wouldn't hear of it. Okay, but she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and has been declining, like most people that have Alzheimer's do. And she finally agreed with her daughter to go ahead and do, I believe she went carnivore. And basically, very quickly, she noticed improvement in her own cognition. Because it is great that at the beginning of the illness, the patients still have the insight to realize something is going on. When
Right.
it's severe, you don't even know, what's going on, and it's difficult even to accept that you may have a cognitive problem. But she noticed immediately, almost immediately, within few weeks, she was better. And she has also noticed that every time, hasn't happened often, but every time that she goes off her diet, the new way of eating, she gets brain fog. She starts getting forgetful. So she's already learned, I have to be strict and keep it this way. Now, this is my personal belief. If it improves my quality of life, then I might not care much about whether it's extending my life, because I don't want to spend the last 20 years of my life in a bed, depending on other people taking care of me. So even if I don't improve my life expectancy, if my quality of life is better for the remainder of my time, then it's all a win, completely a win. You can spend more quality time with family, with friends. You know, I have a grandson. I was just over his house now. My son lives, fortunately, 5 minutes from me. So, you know, if I can spend better time with my family, then I'm not too worried about whether it's gonna change or not my life expectancy. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I agree. There's lifespan and then there's what they call health span. What's the point of living to 102 or 99 if you spend those last 5 or 10 or 15 years in a diaper, catatonic, not non-functional? What is the point of that? So, everyone gets to make their own decision, ideally, if you're in control of your faculties and your decision making. But who who wants to live those last few years eking out an existence, but there's no quality of life? So I I
So,
I, I totally agree.
we have a complaint because we forgot about him, but Rick here has been carnivore for 41 years.
That's impressive. Well, and you live to tell the tale. You haven't died from scurvy yet, have you, Rick?
And he's been trying to get a heart attack by eating everything he cooks or fries is on beef tallow or lard. He has quite an extensive variety of things that he eats. That includes iguana and dogs and
Really?
yes, he does have quite a good story.
Wow.
So I learned about the keto diet, probably like many of us have, because I read a book in the very early, actually in the 70s, one of my cousins had read the first book by Dr. Atkins, and she was eating, it was in the induction phase, and all she was eating was a lot of meat. By the way, she's vegetarian now or vegan, but that's another story. She's a physician as well, by the way. That was my first. I wasn't even in medical school or anything when that happened. Then in the 90s, I have used Dr. Atkins to lose 40 pounds multiple times, yo-yo dieting, because the way I approached it then was, okay, I lost 40 pounds, I'm done, I can go back to eat the way I was eating.
Right.
And of course, we know the results of that. You yo-yo diet. So I'm an expert at losing weight. Now this month, in actually 10 days, will be 2 years carnivore for me, 2.5 years since I went strict keto. And I am not eating any other way. The health benefits have been tremendous. I didn't even start it because of the weight, even though at some point I was 320 to 25 pounds. I started trying to get better control of my blood sugars. All right.
Well, that's how I got into this too. My first book that I ever read was about low carb diets was Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. Now I read the 1990s version, but I got started with Atkins too, and that was also Dr. Westman's entry into all this. He had 2 patients that did the Atkins diet, so
it started with anecdotes also, right?
But those anecdotes led him to do research, to start the clinical research, and that's I actually just released a video about this very thing on my own YouTube channel where I was talking about the lack of curiosity among researchers and doctors and clinicians now, because like Dr. Westman back then saw these 2 patients who lost weight, their diabetes got better, and he was like, wait a minute, this never happens. Like, what are you doing? Tell me so I can tell my other patients. He was curious enough. And now look at the legacy that he's leaving all these decades later. And the video that I did was specifically about an anti-inflammatory diet. But I made the case that here we have thousands upon thousands of people now eating, keto diets, but even more so carnivore diets with no vegetables, no fruits, none of these phytochemicals, no fiber, and they're eating almost exclusively foods that are supposedly causing inflammation, right? Red meat, bacon, fatty pork, fatty other kinds of meat. And yet these people are having amazing improvements in inflammatory conditions, and it's like nobody cares. The conventional research world just like, oh, we just don't like to talk about that. Instead of saying, holy cow, this is amazing, we need to study this. Let's take this from anecdote to funded research. There's just no curiosity whatsoever. I don't know.
I totally agree. I mean, even here, because I know many of the people that are here. Thank you for being here, everybody, by the way. But there are some people here that one of the first things that they lost was pain.
Yep.
It wasn't because of weight loss. It wasn't because it was, most people, when we deal with knee pain, are going, oh, well, you lost some weight. But we're talking about people who may have been severely morbidly obese. They start a very low carbohydrate diet, and within days or weeks, the pain goes away and they haven't even moved the scale.
Yes.
So it is not only because of, you know, the weight loss. I personally was talking to a physician, and I mentioned to her, I had shown her this picture. Oh, of course, your diabetes and hypertension were resolved because you lost weight. No, I lost what was causing all of those things, including the weight,
Yeah.
the hypertension, and the diabetes, were all, the root cause was the same.
Yeah. No,
And
I
but
think this is, it's so important to point out, because this is, it's like you said, that people will say, oh, well, of course your pain went away, you lost weight. But we see the same thing with heartburn that often goes away within a few days, and somebody could still be morbidly obese. And it's like, we have to acknowledge that we live in such a weight centric and weight biased society that we just assume everything is because somebody is heavier. Well, then how do we explain thin people that have arthritis, thin people that have hypertension, thin people that have type 2 diabetes? These conditions are not exclusive to people in bigger bodies. And so weight loss can't be the answer if somebody's already at a normal weight. And I hate that phrase, but if they're already at a reasonable weight, you can't tell someone to lose weight if they don't have weight to lose. How else can we fix hypertension? How else can we fix, high triglycerides? It can't always be weight loss. We focus so much on weight, and it's doing a disservice is what it's doing, really.
and a lot of the people that go, you probably find this, that go into any type of low carbohydrate diet. Most people start because of the weight. They, okay, I'm gonna do this keto thing, or the low carb, or the Atkins, and uh, there are many variations of a low carbohydrate diet, of course. By the way, I read in 2010 a Dr. Atkins book, and do you know that only 2 years ago I realized it wasn't Dr. Atkins who wrote it, because Dr. Atkins had been dead. It was Dr. Westman.
Oh, you mean the new one, the new Atkins for a
The,
new you? Yeah,
I
that's
believe it was published in 2010, and
yeah.
I
So
do
that's
have it
the
around
updated
here. But
one, and it was Dr. Westman, Dr. Stephen Finney, and Dr. Jeff Volek, the three of them, I think. Which I don't think there's
but
anyone better in the world to write a low carb book than the three of those people.
yeah.
So
But I didn't realize until 2 years ago that Dr. Atkins really had nothing to do with it, because he had been dead and buried for a few years,
right.
and they were just picking up the mantle for him.
Yes.
Anyways, this is not a question, but it's a comment I wanted to point out. Yeah, it's great to be in our 60s. I started this at 66, and I am 60 now, 69, now, feeling better than I have in well over 35 years.
Yeah.
And uh, this is so important because fatigue and brain fog and this, and let me sit here, be completely inactive because I don't have the energy to even stand up. It is so common. It is so common. And it not necessarily, you don't have to be severely diabetic, but very often this is a common complaint among diabetics. Anyone that has chronic diseases, oh, well, fatigue, brain fog, and if you're overweight, of course, everybody's gonna blame the weight. And okay, so you have to lose weight, like you were saying. That may not be the root cause. necessarily uh, might help some problems, but it's not the solution for everything.
And the, besides the weight, like this person, I think I forget his name, he's gone, but the just being told you're just getting older. Yeah, it was Larry. Thank you.
Yeah,
Like, oh, all these aches and pains or all these problems, you're just getting older. Well, yeah, things do happen. Things get harder as we get older. But now, how do we explain all these people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s adopting these very, very low carb ways of eating who are feeling, like Larry said, better than he's felt in 35 years? You know, so getting older doesn't have to be horrific. You don't have to become one of these people where you and all your friends socialize and all you do is talk about your medications and your aches and pains and the 72 doctor's appointments you have every week. It doesn't have to be that way.
definitely. And going back to the word simple, it is, or it can be simple. We were at the beginning, we were talking about people who track and they measure and they like to do tests. And some people have a personality where they want to know all these details. And I am somewhere in between. If you want to track, go ahead and track. If you don't want to track, that's great.
Yeah.
Just do. uh, and and then there are situations where you might want to track because what you're seeking help with might be, I am stuck with this particular thing. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to someone, and my advice was, well, it sounds to me like you're under eating. So I want you to track for the next few weeks, 2 to 4 weeks. Use one of these apps and track what you're eating. And, don't know the results yet. I have to follow up with her. But sometimes tracking is needed. But for the most part, when you start, you don't need to do tests. You don't need to track anything if you don't want to. Now, we agree. You probably have a lot of people like this. They do start without doing any testing, and then they might want to do tests 3 months later. My advice, based on the advice of others that are in this space as well, is maybe don't test 3 months into having changed your diet drastically. At least wait 6 months, or do a baseline testing before you start. What do you? I know you don't order labs, but you probably discuss this with your clients. So what do you recommend?
Yeah, I can definitely suggest different labs for people to get, but I can't order them for them. I do think it's good to get baseline tests, baseline everybody, meaning before you make a change, so that you can see the improvement, so that you can see. If you don't know where you started from, then if you do test 3 or 6 or 8 months later, you have nothing to compare to. So like for, fasting insulin as one example, fasting insulin is not a standard test. You really have to specifically request it unless you have like a keto savvy doctor who will just do it. But so I've had a lot of clients who get a fasting insulin test and maybe it's a little bit elevated, but we have nothing to compare to. And of course they're very, oh my God, why is my insulin so high? I've been keto for 3 months, but we don't know what it was before. So even if it's high, there's a chance it's come down a lot from where it was at the beginning. We just don't know because we don't have that data point. So I do think that getting the baseline labs can be helpful. Is it essential? No, but I think it's helpful. And I agree with you totally about just the tracking and the measuring, whether we're talking about, ketones or blood sugar or heart rate or any of this stuff, or like even just recording your food, tracking your food. I don't recommend it unless there's a reason to. If everything's going well, if somebody's getting the results they want, well, just keep doing what you're doing because it's working. If we reach a point where it's not working anymore, or it's not working as well, then there might be a reason to drill down and see, okay, what's really going on here? Maybe somebody is eating more than they think, or eating less than they think, or if it's somebody who's on keto rather than carnivore, maybe there's like a little more carbohydrate coming in than they realize, and you won't really know unless you kind of sit down and track it. But yeah, I want for people to keep it. I just want for people to keep it as uncomplicated as possible. Or here's the thing, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit. Some people just love the data, and that's great. If you just love to track and have your log and your spreadsheet and your app, like that is fine. I get concerned when people weaponize that information against themselves, when they become terrified of like, oh, my blood glucose went up 4 points. Oh, like, you ate a meal and your blood glucose went up like 3 milligrams per deciliter. People just, or why are my ketones only such and such? They just get so anxious and worried when everything is going really well. So I think I don't mind if people want to measure and test things, but I really want them to understand how to interpret the numbers. People really just make themselves terrified over perfectly normal fluctuations in the human body.
Now, it wasn't until I started tracking myself that I was giving a talk about reversing diabetes in a church, and I had a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. So when I came down from having my talk and answering questions, and I have never thought that I suffer from any type of anxiety, or I have not had a problem in public speaking ever. I talk too much, whether it's in private or in public. And interestingly enough, and I had not had anything to eat, just water that day. It was afternoon. It was at around midday that I was giving the talk. When I came down, I looked at my monitor. Will you believe my blood sugar had gone up 30 points?
Oh, I believe it.
At the exact moment I had to go up. And basically, okay, well, I didn't think I was anxious enough. So I just took a look at my CGM app, and just before starting here, and now it's up 10 points. So, sometimes things that we don't even think should be causing us any type of anxiety, or, it may affect your blood sugar. And I do get, for the past year and a half, my A1C has been 5.4. I rarely go to the doctor anymore. So I buy a home kit. I have one here pending for, I don't know if it's July or August. I'm supposed to do it again, but I've had 5.4 now for over 18 months. My hemoglobin A1C.
Yeah. And I think people don't realize that with these measurements that there is a certain amount of variation built into it, and I think we should never really become like very alarmed over one number by itself. You look at the trend. Is something generally going down or generally going up over time? What is this compared to last time? But like, everybody needs to keep in mind that there's a margin of error to all of this. So if it's gone up, has it gone up like a tiny bit and you can actually consider that negligible? You can consider it no change. Everybody gets so hung up on these numbers when I think it's not quite as precise as we sometimes think it is.
Yeah. And so that comment is very important, because if you have a CGM, my opinion is, don't worry too much about the particular number, but like you said, the trend, because we'll give you a good idea of what's going on without necessarily assuming that it's extremely accurate. If you've had a CGM and then checked your finger stick, first of all, you're not measuring the same thing, because a finger stick is measuring the blood sugar in whole blood, and the CGMs are supposed to be measuring the extracellular fluid, and there might be a difference, but they talk about 15 to 20% variation. Well, that's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
If one is 100, the other one can be from 80 to 120. That's a lot of variation. And
Right.
it's not always below or above the number either. I have I have a Keto Mojo, and I do a little bit of tracking. And sometimes I get the exact same number on both, and some other times it's 20, 30 points different.
Yeah. Same here.
All right. Rick promised me a massive heart attack by eating meat, but I just keep getting healthier and thinner. What do you think about this? Obviously, I think I know where you are on this, but we have been preaching cholesterol and saturated fat is bad for the past 80 years. And even if you want to just consider the studies really are not, there's no strong evidence. There's more of a lack of evidence, particularly with the saturated fat and the LDL cholesterol. So everybody's concentrated on the cholesterol when there are 10 other things that have much higher risk when you correlate them to cardiovascular events. But
Yes.
why do we concentrate on cholesterol so much? What do you think?
Well, it's funny you say this. I was just before this call writing up a summary of a recent paper. I'm sure you know the name David Diamond, or your audience is probably familiar with Dr. Diamond.
Yes.
He had a review paper come out very recently on the lack of evidence for targeting LDL-C to below, I think it's 70 milligrams, but basically the lack of evidence for lowering LDL for the purpose of preventing cardiovascular disease or reducing risk. And, why it persists, I think a lot of it is inertia. It's just been so powerful for so long that it just keeps going. That's part of it. I can't speak to what goes on in medical schools, but I think it's just still being taught. It's not changing because the brand new doctors are still learning 50-year-old out of date, incorrect science. And it's also, I don't like to think this way, but some of these public health institutions have a lot to apologize for if they got this wrong all these years. And so nobody wants to be the public face to step forward and say, on behalf of the NIH or on behalf of the USDA, we're sorry, cholesterol actually isn't a problem, or like it's okay to eat saturated fat. And the most confusing thing to me, I think, is this isn't news. There's been papers coming out for decades at this point disproving the connections between dietary saturated fat and cardiovascular disease risk, and between, cholesterol. People have cardiovascular disease with high cholesterol, low cholesterol, and everywhere in between. This isn't news. But how come when these kinds of papers come out, they don't make the 6 o'clock news? They don't make the headlines. What makes the headlines is red meat is killing you. Here's all the reasons to not eat butter. Like I honestly can't really understand it, because the information is out there. If it was suppressed at one time, it no longer is. It's massively out there. And I don't like to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm not sure how else to explain it except to speculate that there are powerful forces at work who don't want the status quo to change.
Yeah. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, don't worry, you're among friends here. Uh, the one last comment regarding that: you said the information is available, and it's Dr. Kiltz. It's a little bit older than me. Dr. Westman is just we're the same age. We're all in medical school around the same times. I graduated a few months before them both, but at the time I graduated, a primary care doctor would not consider any medication for someone who had a total cholesterol of probably 300, 250 to 300. Watch your diet. It will be the advice. And the LDL cholesterol, up to 160 in certain circumstances, was tolerable. Now they want it to be as low as possible, on this emphasis on it has to be. And even if there is, which I think we can explain away, particle sizes aside, if there is any correlation in the LDL-C, it seems to be such a small thing compared to having diabetes, hypertension, obesity, inactivity, smoking. I mean, there are 10 things more important than LDL cholesterol, even if you admitted that there is a correlated risk, right?
Yeah.
It's just that you mentioned measuring insulin. Most doctors don't even know what to do with the high insulin. That's why they
Yeah.
don't measure it.
Yeah.
Because what do I do with it? All right. Amy, where can we find you?
Well, so my website is in desperate need of overhaul, but you can go to stallslayer.com. That's the name of one of my books, was The Stall Slayer, as in breaking a fat loss stall. Stallslayer.com, and there's a button that says work with me. I am available for consultations. But let's see. I am on X, formerly Twitter. I'm on YouTube. You can just kind of Amy Berger Keto. I'm sure my channel will come up. But a good place to go also is adaptyourlifeacademy.com. It's really long. Adaptyourlifeacademy.com. That's where Dr. Westman and I and our team have online courses about keto. We have one on cancer. We have one on protein. We are actually coming out with a carnivore course at the end of July. So everybody stay tuned for that. But lots of good stuff there. Yeah, there's my YouTube channel, Keto Without the Crazy.
All right. So Adapt Your Life Academy. That's a very good place for information. I watch as often as I can Dr. Westman's video. Very interesting, especially when he critiques other videos.
Those are very popular, yeah.
So you can find her everywhere. If you just search her name and you put a word like keto, or she's the one that comes up usually. Well, thank you for being here. We're gonna have tomorrow morning 6 a.m. like Monday through Friday every time. We have another live for the people here. And the person that didn't come this morning for technical difficulties, we're going to do a special live at 3 p.m. on Monday. So stay tuned for that. All right. Thank you again, Amy, for being with us. Keep up the good work, and we'll see. Now, one last question very quickly. It's Dr. Westman really carnivore?
I haven't seen him in person in a long time. The last I saw, he was very close to carnivore. He doesn't eat many plants at all. He used to. I've seen him eat salads. I've seen him eat vegetables, but it's been quite a while. He might be carnivore at this point. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if he isn't, I mean, no problem. But I think he's over the past couple of years, he actually softened his stance, because very early carnivore didn't have the evidence, and
Yeah.
I admire that let's get some evidence here.
He's
But
definitely
anyway,
more friendly to it now because we
yes.
made a course about it. He's willing to teach people how to do it. So I think he has come around to seeing that there's some evidence, and the stuff for which that there's less evidence, the anecdotes are stronger and more numerous. And I just think, it's mostly the shared mechanisms between keto and carnivore that it's like, well, we know keto is safe after all these years. Carnivore is really not that much different metabolically speaking. So I think he has softened to it a lot over the last few years.
All right.
As have
Thank you very
I.
much,
I mean,
Amy.
yeah, when I was brand new to this, I was like, okay, as a keto nutritionist, I know we don't need grains, we don't need a lot of starch, we don't need beans, we don't need fruit, but we have to have leafy greens, right? We have to have fiber.
Fiber.
Well, no, we don't. I'm learning that we don't. So I think there's a lot of us, even in the keto world, who needed a little more convincing. But most of us are pretty friendly to carnivore now.
What's your latest book, by the way?
Well, the most recent book is End Your Carb Confusion that I wrote with Dr. Westman, but I am working now on a book about thyroid. It's not really a keto book at all. It's all about thyroid. And because I just see so many people with undiagnosed or improperly addressed hypothyroidism, and it's really difficult to lose weight, even on a ketogenic diet, even on a carnivore diet, if your thyroid hormones are not where they need to be.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amy, for being here. You have a good afternoon. I'll see everybody at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.